All right. Welcome to the CCC News Podcast. I'm here today with Robin Denning, and we're going a little bit off the beaten path here. We had quite an interesting story hit in the last couple of weeks. We got notice that the Martin family investigation was proceeding forward after finding a vehicle at Cascade Locks. Actually, Robin, you actually went down and grabbed some photos of the Hood River County Sheriff's Office working with a salvage team there to remove a vehicle they believe to be that of the Martin family who disappeared in 1958, December 7th. And we got to talking a little bit, and you said, well, didn't you work on this case a little bit earlier, a couple of years back? And I did. Strangely enough, and so it's kind of a bit of a long story, but we'll try and keep it brief here. But it's pretty interesting. So back in 2020, when we were just getting started, we were 3 months old, I believe, in CCC News. I came across a police log entry from the Wasco County Sheriff's Office, and it was about a drift boat that had sank in the Deschutes River at Whitehorse Rapids. And I used to work on the Deschutes, and that had quite a bit of interest for me. And I saw that Mark Angel was going to be retrieving that boat. Now, Mark Angel, if you don't know, is a Northwest icon. He has been involved in many salvages for decades, and beyond that, he's done a lot of recovery of bodies, unfortunately, of people who have drowned in the past. And so, kind of long story short, I talked with Mark. He was willing to let me go along with him on this salvage. He was 76 at the time and recovering from a stroke. So he was kind of anxious to get back out there and give it a shot after some health issues. And so he and his wife, Judy, and then actually the owners of the boat tagged along, and I was allowed to go along as well. Rob Miles, also from Maupin, was on that trip. So we spent the day up, working on retrieving that boat. We weren't necessarily successful, and it was quite a ride. Mark was not in the greatest of shape at that point, and we were actually returning from this attempt to pull this drift boat from the water, and Mark couldn't see quite as well as he had in the past. And as we were going down the river, we hit a rock pretty hard. And we were in a jet boat, which has a propulsion on the back, not a prop, but a propulsion, and it's called a shoe on the back. And if you hit that shoe, you lose all direction and ability to move forward. And so that's what happened. And so we were bouncing and kind of just floating down the river and not on a plane. See, when jet boats are up and powering forward, they sit up higher on the water. And in this case, the boat was down pretty low. And so we were hitting every rock in the river as we bounced down the Deschutes there. And, this is kind of the quick story, but eventually Mark was able to get the boat over to the shore, and we tied it off, and we were able to walk back down to the vehicles and that thing. But on that day, he said, I'm never going to navigate a whitewater river in a jet boat again. And it was kind of a rough moment, and I even asked Mark, I said, wow, I was doing a story, but I didn't expect this. And it's like, do you even want that in the story? And he was an earnest person, and he said, of course, he goes, yeah, he didn't even bat an eye. He's like, that's what happened. That's the truth. I was like, okay, just fascinating. But so then, within about, I'd say 6 or 7 months later, I got a call from Mark, and he told me he was interested in the Martin family disappearance. Now, this was a family, like I said earlier, that disappeared on December 7th, 1958. And they came up to the gorge, I think Hood River, Cascade Locks, possibly the Dalles, and they were on a Christmas, they were hunting for Christmas decorations, boughs and that kind of thing that you would use in your house during the holidays. And the vehicle they were in and all 5 family members went missing on that day. Yeah. Very strange. There was the mother and father, Kenneth Martin, and his wife, Barbara, and then the three daughters, Barbara, Virginia, and Susan. And Mark was obsessed with this case. He thought there was a logical solution. He had actually been diving in the Dalles down near where the effluent from the aluminum plant goes into the river, down to Crates Point. You know, the little beach there at Crates Point?
Yeah.
Right in that area. And Mark had been diving in that area, and he said he came into contact with some rocks that they were large boulders in that section of the river. And he said they just looked at a place. It didn't make any sense for them to be in that portion of the river. And so he was fairly convinced that they might be there. Excuse me, the vehicle might be there, because the vehicle has never been recovered. It's 66 years at that time. Or not, it's been 63 years or so back then. So anyways, we had talked about, actually had a boat then, about him coming down and maybe doing a dive on it and seeing if we could find anything to substantiate, his theories and that kind of thing. And we talked about it and discussed it a couple of times. And unfortunately, Mark was in cognitive decline at that point in time. And he had struggled, I think, a lot with his inability to do the things that he had done his whole life, which was searching rivers. I mean, if you think about doing a dive in whitewater where you're going down to the depths of, say, like 10 or 15, 20 feet, it's completely dark, and and you're searching for someone who's drowned, or like he did just things that no one else could do. He was just a different kind of person, a whole nother level. And I think it was really, really hard for him to lose those abilities and skills. Back, that would have been, I think, in 2021, Mark got into an altercation with his wife that went very badly. And he was arrested for attempted murder and that kind of thing. And I don't know the whole story there. I just know just the basic details. But that's kind of the run up on the Martin story. So when that story kind of resurfaced a few weeks ago, it just immediately sent blood running to my head. I was like, oh my God, there's is possibly an answer to this question, because when Mark was chatting with me about it, I kind of went back and looked at all the different details of the case and that kind of thing, and like it's fascinating. The whole family goes missing. There were some other wild details in there about another vehicle that was found in Cascade Locks the day after, that was traced back to a couple of ex-cons, and then there was really wild next to that stolen vehicle, which was a Chevrolet. Apparently there was a gun found, and this is in Cascade Locks, and there was blood on the gun, and it was a gun that had been stolen from Meyer and Frank. And from what I understand, not from what I understand, but from what I've read in the publications about the missing family, is that the Martins also had a son who was in the Navy at that time. However, years previous, he had been working at Meyer and Frank in Portland, and had been let go when certain sporting goods came up missing. And it was the gun with these same serial numbers that was found in Cascade Locks. So that was always, kind of in the back of my mind. It's like, there's just some interesting details in this case. And now none of it, has ever been brought back to actually pinpoint who may have done it or what. It's just this series of details that have fogged this missing persons case for decades. And so when we saw this arise again, and that the Hood River Sheriff's Office was going out to do a salvage to see if they could bring this vehicle It again, like I said, just sent me into a real. It just caught me off guard. It was crazy. Well, hey, maybe this is a good time to take a break, and I'll kind of get the rest of my thoughts put together on this. But yeah, this was an interesting case for sure.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
All right. Hey, Josh, did you know that we are funded by our readers in large part?
I did know that, but please tell me more.
Yeah, it's our local readers here that make it possible for us to go out and gather news on local businesses and important issues in our community. And so we need people to support local news. Did you know you can make a difference in our community's economy and culture by supporting local journalism? I bet you did. But maybe you out there don't. And so you should visit our Support Us page at cccnews.com to subscribe to a monthly donation to keep news local. Start making a difference in our community today. Again, that's cccnews.com.
And remember, CCC News is available for everyone and funded by readers.
And we're back. Right. So we were discussing the Martin family and their disappearance. And so in recent years or so, Archer Mayo, a diver from White River, had some definite theories about where the Martin family vehicle is, which was a 1954 Ford Squire wagon, red and cream colored. And I talked to Archer's I'd say workmate or partner in this search, and Ian Costello, and he said that they did a lot of computer mapping, or I'm missing the word there, but
like LiDAR, radar type of underwater features and things like that.
I think it was more like trying to pinpoint the location rather than that, but essentially. And I think they were using it to map all the floods and maybe how far the car would get pushed over the years, from the possible location. But Ian, what he told me, he said they came within about 5 feet because Archer went out on a dive and he did find a 54 Ford Squire wagon.
Wow.
At least that's what Ian told me, and so here we are, several weeks ago, and Ian said, I think that was back in late last year, maybe November or something like that. Or shoot, I'm sorry, I'm getting mixed up on the dates on that. I do know this, that Ian said they took all the evidence and stuff that and information that they had gathered on that dive to the Hood River County Sheriff's Office several weeks, and then the sheriff's office decided to go ahead and spend the money and go ahead and do a salvage. So just recently they spent 2 days, attempting to pull this vehicle to the surface, and it was very difficult because it was filled with sediment, rocks. Over the years, 66 years, you could imagine, the amount of stuff that would be covering the vehicle. And they spent 2 full days. Now, I believe you were out and you grabbed a photo.
Yeah, I went down in the scene for sure. Yeah, they had a lot of things going on. They had big crane and they had a couple of boats kind of searching around, and clearly people in the water. Yeah. And I went up and took photos from the bridge. It's the only bridge you're able to, or the Dow's Bridge, you can't walk on the Hood River Bridge, but you can walk on the Great Bridge and the Cascade Locks. And it was incredibly windy and cold, and it was a very, from standing on the bridge, excuse me, it was a very, the weather was, it looked fine, but it was cold and bitter, and they were out there for sure.
Right.
And pulling things up slowly, but wasn't clear what they were pulling up. And that's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, I think Ian said there were 3 vehicles in that location. One was a Volkswagen Bug of some year, I'm not sure which, and then there were others. But yeah, so the salvage company initially was attempting to to try and get the vehicle into a container of some sort so that they might be able to pull it to the surface more intact. But it was buried so deep that obviously was not possible.
Yeah. Imagine how much damage they do to the vehicle in that process of salvage too. Well, try not to do the damage, but if you're struggling with it, it means that there's something is happening, and it's a crime. If you're trying to preserve those details for a crime that's 67, 68 years old, like that's a bad combination of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and in heavy current, and just in his spot in inhospitable conditions down there at I think they were at 50 feet or something like that, cold. Yeah. Probably muddy, and probably having to use lights and stuff.
And for diving reference, the Columbia River is not a good place to dive. It's very murky. The current is very strong, and it's people avoid the Columbia River for diving reasons. And we just talked about Mark Angel diving in the river, but the Columbia River is very much diver beware territory. For sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I guess it's rolling through there at 3 or 4 miles an hour minimum.
Oh yeah.
In that locks, it seems to be even faster. So
yeah, it runs really fast sometimes. Yeah. This time of year too, it's running really fast.
Because they were diving right at the pedestrian bridge there over to Thunder Island and Cascade Lock. So
they must be tethered to something, so they don't drift downriver. But you can imagine the force on you now. You between the river and the tether, right? And so that doesn't sound easy.
Not at all. I would imagine everything you'd be doing at that you're struggling to do. Maintain your balance. So I believe you were there when they were bringing up parts of the vehicle. I'm not sure. Maybe it was the Volkswagen on the first day.
It was kind of too far. We published the photos that were there. We looked carefully. We didn't want to publish anything that was going to, not the family wasn't going to be respectful to the family.
Correct.
And so we were careful to do that, but it was just vehicle parts. It kind of looked like the bug. We kind of got the bug perhaps on the back of the trailer and coming up, and things were moving quite slowly, so it was hard for us to stay there for a long time. We were just a small team, so we had to move on to the other projects too. But we saw that bug come. It was so slow. They moved so slow pulling it up. Cool. So I think it was the end of the second day, and they were able to get some straps on the Ford Squire that was down there, and I believe what the spokesperson for the sheriff's office told me was that once they began pulling on that vehicle, it literally kind of disintegrated. It just all fell apart. And he said it made essentially a debris field on the bottom of the river. So kind of like a crash or something like that, things would be spread out all over the bottom of the river. So, but they were able to get, some parts of the vehicle, the frame and the motor, to the surface. And so that was a significant, I think, win for them. They were excited to at least have something to examine, to possibly ID and verify that it was the Martin family car. And so I believe what was done is the vehicle was taken to an undisclosed place to me at this point in time anyways, but for doing some more of that research or investigation of that vehicle. I guess it would be forensics. I'm not... Yeah, that's right. So it came up, both the motor and the frame came up, right? And then there was some question around identifying those things. What happened then?
Yeah, so apparently there are numbers on the frame specific to that exact car that was purchased, and also I believe there would be a number on the motor as well, model number or a specific model number for that vehicle. And so I think the intent there is to try and discover as much of that information as possible. And I don't think we heard much up until earlier this week, and we got notice that they were not able to find any of those numbers or enough of those numbers to make a guaranteed identification on that. So
Yeah.
so still shrouded in some mystery here. On the other hand, the colors were right. The year. I mean, how many 1954 Ford Squires wagons, were out there, right? Like,
and came within 5 feet of the basis that they did that calculation, right?
Right.
Knowing perhaps where it went off into the river and how long it's been.
Yeah.
I mean, if there's another Ford Squire 25 feet away, like, someone let us know. But I think that's pretty unlikely.
Right. Yeah, very. I agree. I think you're like 99%, right?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crushing not to have that conclusive evidence, which is something you're always trying to look for and like make all these calls and talk to all these people.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to come by, and a story this old too. It sometimes feels easier for folks like us to put things together in a logical, sensible way than it is for law enforcement, because it's the burden of proof is high, and that's
very high,
and that's a good thing,
right?
But in situations like this, it makes it hard, and it's the reason we're talking about it, right?
Right.
It's so that we can kind of like add these details,
right?
Yeah.
And it's nice to to kind of remove some of that mystery. I kind of missed some kind of important facts here I might go back over too. And in 1958, when the family went missing, it was all the 5 family members and the vehicle. However, several months later, 2 of the daughters did surface, and they were found down below Cascade Locks. And so, however, the mother, the father, and the eldest daughter, Barbara, were never recovered. Their bodies were never recovered. So I guess I point that out because that's why we were trying to be so sensitive with the photography, because we didn't know what was going to be figured out. And boy, I think it would have provided a lot of closure, had they gotten to the point of knowing whether there was anybody in that vehicle or not.
Yeah. It is a long time,
it is,
for an organic matter to stay in the same spot like that. You can understand the frame and the engine staying in one place, but
right.
It's
66 years. That's a very long time. But everything about this case just kind of gives me the chills. It just, like in the initial disappearance, there were theories that ranged from Cascade Locks all the way up here to the Dalles. They found, I talked to you about, where Mark thought the vehicle was located, and that was based on reports that there were track marks that matched the vehicle tires there, and I believe some paint chips, like the vehicle may have hit a rock out on that bluff area just up above Crates Cove there. And so, it just, the speculations are wild. Like if you go in and start reading about this, it's just kind of all over the place. But it's kind of funny. It seems like the simplest answer was probably the one right here. Like the vehicle's last seen in Cascade Locks, and the vehicle was then recovered, not too far off of where the locks are. So right in the locks actually. So yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing some of these extra details with us, Tom, and walking us through your investigations as you've seen them and experienced them, right? We're kind of in a speculative place, which is an uncomfortable place for a journalist. We like facts and verification of facts, and so, but
sometimes you just don't get answers. That's always the goal in journalism is to eke out the truth somehow, and something like it's just you you still just don't know.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And if anybody has any extra details they want to share, please send us an email. Do you have a good way of contacting you?
Sure. You can reach me at tom@cccnews.com. My phone number is 541-980-2756. Yeah. Love to hear from anybody who has some information or some insights. That would be very helpful. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, Robin.
Thanks for coming, Tom.
Always here.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
You bet. CCC News offers ads for budgets of any size, ranging from mom and pops just starting out to a well-established business with decades of work in our area. Get in front of our 100,000 unique readers every month with your goods and service at just the time they are looking for your help. We can tailor your advertising to suit you and your budget to increase your business while not breaking the bank. Contact me, Tom Peterson, at tom@cccnews.com to see what works for you, or call me at 541-980-2756. Again, that's 541-980-2756. cccnews.com, working for you 24/7, all local, all the time in the Mid-Columbia.